Welcome to the Deep Dive, the space where we really get under the surface of fascinating ideas.
Great to be here.
Today, we have a truly special session lined up for you, the learner. You brought us session 21 of the Law of One.
Yes, and we're going to explore its pretty rich layers together.
It's exciting stuff. This session, session 21, recorded back in 1981 with the entity known as Ra. It offers such a unique perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. A unique lens on everything from, ancient history right through to our own spiritual unfolding. Think of this as your personal exploration of some really profound insights.
Exactly. This isn't your average read. It's a Q&A dialogue, essentially. Channeled information that, well, it just opens up some incredible viewpoints on universal principles, humanity's journey.
Big topics.
Right. So let's dive straight in. Question 1.
Okay, so 21.1. The questioner kicks things off with a very practical point, actually. It's about the integrity of the information. They ask if future content, stuff Ra hasn't said yet, might be affected if the instrument that's the person channeling Ra reads the material they've already received.
Ah, okay. So it's a concern about keeping the channel clear. Like, could reading it introduce bias or something?
Pretty much. Could prior exposure kind of muddy the waters, so to speak?
Makes sense. What did Ra say?
Well, Ra's response is actually quite reassuring. They explain that future communications are independent of the instrument's conscious mind.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
It comes down to two things, really. One, the instrument's incredible dedication, her purity of intention, and two, Ra's specific method for communication.
Right. They have a method designed to minimize distortion.
Exactly. Ra describes it as temporarily removing the conscious mind complex of the instrument.
Removing it? How?
It sounds fascinating. They mention using specific sound vibration complexes. It's almost like they're tuning the instrument, you could say, tuning her to a different frequency that's less susceptible to interference from her own thoughts.
Sound vibration complexes. That's quite something. It really highlights the care involved, doesn't it? And like you said, the dedication of the instrument.
Absolutely. It underlines the need for a pure vessel for this kind of information, which leads us nicely into question 21.2.
Okay.
This one's about vocabulary. The questioner asks, basically, whose words are these? Is Ra using their own vocabulary, or are they using the instrument's words?
That's a good question. Are we hearing Ra directly, or is it filtered through the instrument's language?
Ra clarifies they use the vocabulary that's familiar to the questioners, so in this case, English.
Right.
But they also add something interesting. They note the instrument has a very broad vocabulary, so often the distinction isn't really that important anyway.
So it's like a cooperative effort. They're building a bridge with language, making sure the message gets across clearly. It shows Ra's adaptability, too.
Completely. It's all about fostering understanding. Okay, moving on to 21.3. The focus shifts a bit here towards a specific person, Andrija Puharic.
Right, the parapsychology researcher.
Mm-hmm.
The question is whether he can read some unpublished healing material.
Yes. Is it okay for him to see this specific info? And Ra's response is quite balanced.
Okay.
They say, well, Puharic already knows some of this, maybe not all of it, so reading it isn't going to be a huge shock or anything. It's harmless.
But there's more to it.
There is. They then give some specific advice about another person, Henry. Ra advises him to prepare spiritually, maybe through meditation, before he actually tries to do any healing work.
Ah, and they mentioned his vibrational state, right?
Exactly. It brings in this idea of vibrational alignment being important for healing, needing a certain energetic harmony. It's a subtle nod to the energetic side of things.
Fascinating. It blends the practical with the energetic. Now, 21.4 gets right to a core principle, free will.
Yes, this is a big one in the Law of One.
The questioner is worried. They made a statement that reveals their own belief about someone named Spectra, and they ask if maybe they should remove that statement to protect Spectra's free will, kind of mirroring how Ra sometimes holds back information.
It's a fantastic question because it shows the questioner really living the principles, doesn't it? They're trying to apply the Law of One in their own actions.
Totally, like asking, am I doing this right? Am I respecting free will here?
And Ra's answer is so direct.
What do they say?
Simply that it's a matter for the questioner's own discretion.
Wow. Okay.
It just powerfully reinforces how central free will is. It puts the responsibility squarely back on the individual.
Each person's choice.
Right.
Okay, so let's shift gears. Question 21.5 takes us way back in time, deep time, revisiting the Maldek entities.
Right. The questioner wants to nail down the timeline for when the beings from the destroyed planet Maldek were transferred to Earth. There were some number issues earlier, apparently.
So they're asking for a clearer timeline. This involves huge scales of time, doesn't it?
Oh, immense scales. Cosmic history.
Can you walk us through what Ra laid out?
Sure. Ra breaks it down. First, the initial transition happened about 500,000 years ago. These entities entered a state Ra calls a knot.
A knot, like tangled energy?
Something like
Yeah.
that. An intense energetic entanglement. And they were in that state for a very, very long time. Then, around 200,000 years ago, a Confederation entity stepped in to help loosen this knot.
Okay.
After that, the Maldek entities moved into what Ra calls inner dimensions, or time-space dimensions, for a long period of healing.
Interdimensional healing. That's mind-bending.
Isn't it? And then finally, about 46,000 years ago, they actually started incarnating here on Earth in third density.
500,000 years from disaster to incarnation here, it just completely changes your sense of time.
Hmm.
And that healing happened on other planes.
Wow, it really does. It suggests healing from that kind of trauma can happen beyond our physical reality. So this leads to 21.6.
Right.
The questioner wants to be absolutely sure, did any Maldek entities incarnate here on Earth in third density before our current 75,000-year cycle began?
Pinpointing their arrival in our kind of reality.
Exactly. And Ra confirms no third density Earth incarnations before this current cycle started for them.
Okay, clear enough. Then 21.7 pushes a bit further.
Uh-huh. Could they have maybe incarnated in second density before this cycle, like as animals or something more basic?
Exploring all the possibilities of their journey.
Right. But Ra says, nope, incorrect. They weren't in second density. They were in what Ra calls time-space, third density.
The inner planes again?
Exactly. Still third density consciousness, but in those non-physical realms, healing, learning about what happened, it's a crucial distinction. Third density isn't just physical.
That's a really important point. Okay, 21.8. This one's about the quarantine around Earth.
Yeah, the one supposedly set up at the start of this 75,000-year cycle. The questioner assumes the Guardians put it there to stop free will being violated.
Seems logical given the focus on free will.
It does, but Ra gives a more nuanced answer. It wasn't just preventative.
Oh, what else was involved?
Ra explains it was more of an intensification of an existing quarantine. It happened after entities from Mars, the red planet, were transferred here.
Okay.
Apparently, they received some genetic help when they arrived. Well-intentioned help, mind you. But the Guardians, who Ra calls the gardeners, saw this help as an infringement on the free will of those Martian entities.
Even though it was meant to help.
Even then. So because of that perceived infringement, the existing light quarantine was strengthened.
Wow. So even kindness, if it overrides choice, can have these big cosmic consequences. Shows how carefully the Guardians operate. Okay, 21.9. Reincarnation.
Yes, specifically at the start of this 75,000-year cycle. Lifespans were much longer then, Ra says, around 900 years. The questioner asks how reincarnation worked back then and how it affected spiritual growth.
Right, back in the early days of this cycle. What was it like?
Ra gives this fascinating picture of early third density evolution here. They describe it starting with a sleep and a forgetting. That veil of forgetting is key to third density, allowing real free will.
So not remembering past lives was essential.
Apparently so. Early on, consciousness was focused on basics, survival, animalistic needs. Then, slowly, awareness grew. Companionship, laughter, appreciating beauty, seeking knowledge, trade, love.
A gradual awakening. And reincarnation itself, how did that function?
Ra says in those very early times it was pretty much automatic and rapid. You died, you reincarnated almost instantly. There wasn't much review or processing needed between lives.
Like a continuous cycle.
Pretty much. But then, as the energy centers started to activate more, especially the green ray center, the heart center associated with love and compassion, things changed.
How so?
Incarnations became less automatic. The lessons shifted towards love and connection, and the time between lives started to lengthen.
To allow for reflection.
Exactly. For review, for healing, for integrating the experiences, especially those related to love and relationships, it became a more conscious process.
That's a beautiful model, from automatic cycling to conscious learning, driven by love, which leads right into 21 point Sarah.
It does, the questioner asks. Okay, so when reincarnation stops being automatic, does the entity then get to choose when they come back and even choose their parents?
Taking ownership of the journey.
Precisely. And Ra confirms, yes, that is correct. It's a major step in conscious evolution, moving from being carried by the current to actively navigating it.
Actively steering your own course. So where are we now in that process? That's question 21.11, right?
Right.
What percentage of people today are making those conscious choices about reincarnation?
Ra gives a specific number, which is pretty striking, approximately 54%.
54%, just over half. That gives a real snapshot of where humanity is, collectively, in this cycle.
Wow, it really does. A fascinating metric for our current stage of evolution.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. Question 21.12 looks at the first 25,000-year cycle. Technology. Were there any machines back then like we have today?
Rad draws a clear distinction. No machines in our modern sense. But they did use implements, tools made of wood and rock.
For basic needs.
Yeah, for getting food and also for aggression, unfortunately. Basic survival tools, essentially.
A much more direct relationship with nature then. Okay, 21.13 asks about the end of that first 25,000-year cycle. Did anything dramatic happen physically? Like the changes expected at the end of the full 75,000 years? Or was it just like taking stock for the harvest?
Ray differentiates here. No major, sudden physical changes. It wasn't like the end of a major cycle shift.
This is gradual evolution.
Exactly. Ongoing adaptation to the environment, Ray mentions skin color changes, for example, and population growth as food became more available, but no big cataclysms tied to the cycle's end itself.
Okay, so a milestone, but not a reset button. That leads to 21.15. After that first cycle, if there wasn't a big harvest, positive or negative, what did the Guardians do? Did they intervene?
The questioner guesses they noticed nothing much happened harvest-wise and asks what action was taken.
And Ray's answer.
It really emphasizes their non-interference policy again. Ray says basically no action was taken, they just remained aware, available if a call for help or understanding came.
So, respecting free will above all.
Absolutely. Their main job is preserving the conditions for learning, and free will is paramount to that. They don't step in unless asked.
Just patiently waiting. Which is what 21.15 confirms, right? The Confederation, the gardeners, didn't do anything until someone actually called.
Correct. Rock confirms that. The call is the trigger for interaction.
So the big question in 21.16 is, when did that first call happen? And how?
This is where the Maldek entities come back in. Ra says the first call came from them about 46,000 years ago.
Okay. And why did they call?
It was complex. Ross says they were consciously confused about why they were incarnating on Earth, even though unconsciously they knew they needed to sort of rectify what happened on Maldek. This inner conflict, this confusion mixed with unconscious knowing, that created the call.
That dissonance was the signal. Fascinating. And the Confederation's response.
Love and light, that was their response.
Which brings us to 21.16, how? How exactly do they send love and light? Is it like a focused beam?
Ra describes planetary entities within the Confederation whose whole purpose is to continuously send these pure streams of undifferentiated love and light. It's not specific thoughts or concepts, just pure energy directed towards those who call.
Like a constant broadcast of positive energy available to anyone who tunes in or calls out.
That's a good way to put it, a fundamental energetic offering.
Beautiful. Okay, now 21.18 switches focus again to the Orion group, the self-service path. Did the first distortion, the law of one itself, require giving the Orion group equal time or opportunity right from the start?
The questioner is asking about that principle of balance. Did the Confederation's help automatically mean Orion got a shot too?
Yeah.
Ra says, not in this initial period with the Maldek call. It wasn't necessary then because of the Maldek group's orientation.
What was their orientation? That's 21.1 line, isn't it?
Yes. Ra says their orientation was such that the Confederation's aid wasn't really perceived by them in a way that created an immediate need for an opposing Orion-style opportunity. They were focused on healing and understanding, not power or control, which might attract Orion.
Ah, okay, so 21.20 follows that logic.
Mm-hmm.
Because the aid wasn't perceived in a way that created conflict or polarity, balancing wasn't needed yet.
Exactly. Ra confirms this and clarifies the principle. Balance is needed for opportunity. If someone is ignorant or simply seeking basic help without a strong polarity, there's no real opportunity for Orion to engage with yet. It's when potential arises, potential for choosing a path, that balanced opportunities become necessary based on everyone's orientations.
That makes sense. It's about offering choice when a choice can actually be made, not just automatic opposition. Okay, timelines again. 21.21.
Yeah.
When did the Orion group first make contact? In years?
Ra gives a figure. Approximately 60,000 years ago.
Wait, 60,000. That's before the Maldek call at 46,000 years ago.
It is. Which prompts the questioner to clarify in 21.22. Okay, maybe not the absolute first contact, but the first attempt in the second 25,000-year cycle.
Right, narrowing it down.
And Ra gives a different time for that, approximately 3,600 years ago. They apparently found more fertile territory then.
More fertile, meaning conditions were more suitable for their influence.
And that seems to be the implication, a more strategic timing on their part.
So they were patient. And just to lock down the timeline, 21.23 asks, so definitely no Orion attempt around 46,000 years ago when Maldek called.
Ra confirms, correct. No Orion contact at that specific time.
Okay, now 21.24 brings up another legendary place, Lemuria. Was the second 25,000-year cycle the time of Lemuria?
Ah, Lemuria. Always captures the imagination. The questioner asks if that second cycle was its main period.
Was it?
Ra says incorrect. The main Lemurian civilization wasn't primarily in the second cycle, however.
Yes.
They do add that survivors from Lemuria's eventual catastrophe did continue their teachings in various places well into later periods. South America, North America, other land masses.
So its influence persisted even if its main era was earlier.
Okay.
So when was its main era and its catastrophe? That's 21.25.
Ra gives a timeline. Lemuria started developing around 53,000 years ago. The main destruction was completed around 50,000 years ago.
So towards the end of the first major cycle.
Exactly, during the last small cycle of that first major 25,000-year period.
And there's a quick terminology check in 21.26, right? Master cycle versus major cycle.
Yes, the questioner checks, and Ra clarifies major cycle is the term they use.
Yeah, so 21.27 links back. Was Lemuria's destruction caused by the end of that first major cycle, or was it just coincidental timing?
A fascinating question about cosmic connections.
What did Ross say?
Ra describes a confluence of energies at the end of a major cycle. They suggest this confluence sort of encouraged or facilitated the planetary adjustments that were already becoming inevitable, which included Lemuria's destruction.
So not a direct cause, maybe, but the cycle's end amplified or triggered something already underway.
That seems to be the idea, a connection between the big cosmic rhythms and events on the planet's surface.
Profound stuff. Okay, last couple of questions. 21.28 asks about the second major cycle, the one from 50,000 to 25,000 years ago. Did any great civilizations develop then?
The questioner is looking for another Lemuria or Atlantis, perhaps?
Did Ray mention any?
Ray broadens the definition of great. They say there were no large technological societies like Lemuria or Atlantis, but there was progress. Some advancements among groups in China linked to Deneb, and importantly, significant positive activation of the green ray, the hard energy, in places like the Americas, Africa, Australia, India.
So spiritual or heart-centered development.
Exactly. And Ray specifically highlights South America, where a strong vibration towards love developed. This led to a population that was actually considered harvestable, ready for positive graduation, without needing big technology or complex social structures.
That's huge. It redefines progress, doesn't it? Greatness isn't just tech. It's love, it's compassion.
A really crucial insight, spiritual development as a measure of civilizational achievement.
Okay, and the session wraps up with 21.29. The questioner checking on the instrument.
Yes, a very considerate end. Apologizing for any confusion, asking how to make the instrument more comfortable, hoping for another session.
And Raz response.
They note a slight misalignment of the ritual object's book, candle, sensor, but say it's not significant. They do acknowledge the instrument is depleted, though.
Understandable after channeling all that.
Definitely. Ra commends the questioner's care and agrees to a second session, but only after the instrument has rested properly.
Well, the learner, what a journey that was. This deep dive into Law of One, Session 21. Just incredibly insightful, wasn't it?
It really was. We've covered immense timelines, the nuts and bolts of channeling, the absolute centrality of free will, the evolution of consciousness.
So much ground covered. And what really stands out is that interconnectedness, like you said earlier.
Definitely. How, even good intentions need to respect free will, how spiritual growth unfolds patiently over ages. And that idea that progress isn't just about building things,
but about cultivating love and compassion. That South America example was powerful.
It really was.
So as you reflect on all this, the learner, think about how these ancient cycles, these deep principles, might shed light on your own journey right now.
Yeah. How do these concepts of free will, divine assistance, different kinds of progress, how do they resonate with you today?
It's definitely food for thought. Lots to mull over.
For sure. Layers upon layers.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. May your own exploration continue to unfold with clarity and with love. Namaste. I am you, and you are me.